Are all of my breakthroughs a British prog rock band from the 70s? Because, yes.
if you would be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves for the podcast?
I was just thinking, since you said live, since we're live, I was like, "Hey, this is Jim from Human Impact." So this is Jim from Human Impact.
Hey, and this is Chris from Human Impact.
And so, Jim and Chris, people listening to this podcast will probably know you from your other bands throughout the years, like Cop Shoot Cop and Unsane. But as you mentioned, we're talking about your new project, Human Impact, today. Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So let's talk about Human Impact. Chris, Jim, you guys are joined by Chris Pravdica from Swans and Phil Puleo, who was in both Cop Shoot Cop and Swans. So that's a hell of a lineup. How did the four of you guys get together and decide to start a band together?
Jim, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously, I've got a long history with Phil. Even after Cop Shoot Cop broke up, we continued to make music kind of ongoingly through the years in different ways. And Chris Spencer and I have known each other, since even, before Cop. So we always wanted to make music together. It just took us this long to kind of get around to it. And when we started talking about it, I think Swans at that point were like coming to an end of that incarnation of the band. And it seemed like perfect timing to start working with Chris on bass and Phil on drums. They're now touring a bit with Swans, but, it was kind of very organic. We all kind of knew each other in a way.
Just based around the fact that you guys all kind of gestated in the same scene around the same time, I assume that you guys knew each other for a long time. Besides Phil, who was in two of the bands, did you guys ever get a chance to make music before this? Like, did you and Chris ever have a band together?
Me and Jim had known each other from, a couple of years before really Unsane or Cop Shoot Cop got started. And then in about, I think it was like 97. Jim, when did Cop break up? Like 97, around there?
96, 97, right around there, yeah.
Yeah, it was right around when they broke up, and Unsane was doing a lot of touring. And I had actually mentioned to the other guys in Unsane about maybe having Jim come into Unsane and do samples and noise stuff with us. But the other guys weren't into it. They wanted to stay a three-piece, because there's something really, I think, sort of special about a power trio. So I had always wanted to play with Jim. So then eventually down the line, a couple of years ago, Jim hit me up at an Unsane show to play with him. So we had always, I'd always wanted to play in a band with him and work with him. And Phil obviously has been around the whole time. Chris, I had met a bunch of times, but didn't know him quite as long. But it was very organic. We all knew each other, and it just kind of gelled immediately. So.
How clear of an idea did you have for what the music was going to sound like?
Zero.
Yeah.
We had no idea. We just started kind of throwing stuff back and forth at first. Me and Jim were just throwing ideas back and forth to try stuff and just see what happened. I mean, obviously both of us are used to writing a lot of stuff. So, and that's really helped us, that both of us are very creative. So we can just work off each other constantly. It's actually really, it's super amazing. It's really fun. After being in Unsane for so long, like the last Unsane record I wrote a vast majority of, and it was really starting to seem like I was kind of just writing things by myself for the band, where now I'm in a band where everybody is super creative and has a lot of input. So.
Yeah, we definitely didn't go into it with any kind of like intention of like, okay, this is the kind of sound we want to make, So like the first recording session was kind of like, okay, what is this? And it wasn't, we came out of that session and it took some work, after we recorded it to kind of like create, work those into like workable songs in a way. In a way, it's not a surprise what we sound like, given where we've been. It's an indicator of like what kind of sounds we like, and where we're at. But yeah, we went in kind of blind. By the time we hit our second recording session, it was kind of like, this is what it is. And it's continued to grow.
Chris, you mentioned that you were writing a lot of the music for Unsane, and in Human Impact, this is a much more collaborative experience. Is that something that you look for?
Oh, totally. Yes. I don't want to write everything by myself. No way, man. I mean, I love writing music, and I do write a lot of shit by myself, but it's so much more rewarding to be in a band with other people who have like a lot of creative input. Because you can work off their ideas, they can work off yours. Everybody's working together. It really is it's greater than the sum of its parts. You know what I mean? Like everybody kicks in their thing, but then works off each other, and it really, instead of everybody doing, what you wrote, everybody's kind of kicking in their own style, and it really, in this case, and I think in not all cases would this work, but it does definitely work very well in this case. Like for me, working with Jim, he's got this massive arsenal of sounds and different, just sounds, not even notes, not even just he's just got such a wide array of things to work with for me, as opposed to just guitar bass drums. You know what I mean? It opens up a giant world of creativity. It's pretty cool.
Now, forgive my ignorance, but in collaborating with somebody like Jim, who is very much on the electronic side, how does that take place? I'm assuming you guys aren't jamming together, or are you? Do you guys have a recording studio and he brings some equipment with him?
Well, we do both. Like a lot of it we've been doing, because I live in Northern California and Jim's in New York. So we've been sending shit back and forth, but then I go and I stay at Jim's house. Him and his wife Beth are super creative, and it's fucking amazing every time I go. When we go and we jam with the guys, we work out new shit. There's some that have been written in the studio, some that have been written just, via the internet. So we've really hit it from all different ways. It's just like, if we go there, like there was a couple of sessions where I would go out, I would hang out for a week or two and just kind of leave it wide open and see what we came up with. And then by the end, we sort of take what we want and cut the fat and move on. And then next session we do another thing, and it's kind of weird because once I show up and I'm there, then we really figure out what works, because you don't know ahead of time. There'll be a lot of stuff that me and Jim have written where we write the drum machine and we do all this stuff, and it's really basic. And then we get there and we're like, maybe not, and then some where I wouldn't have thought maybe they'd work, where they actually work really well. So it really is about us being in the same room, but at the same time, a lot of it is done, via the internet. So.
And at what point do Phil and the other Chris come into the mix?
Immediately when I show up in New York, basically, is what's going on. Phil comes out and we all just kind of go into a rehearsal space. I mean, this coming week, we start again. So it's just really like a super intensive week or two, and like this coming week, where we're going to the studio Friday, Saturday, I don't know, I think so, but to mix new ones for the next record. Actually, we're on, because the new record comes out in a couple weeks, so we're already on to the next one. But it's pretty intensive. I think we're practicing maybe 4 or 5 times a week, something like that. And then we have a record release show on the 14th, I think, at St. Vitus in Brooklyn. And they're also, Ithacac is also putting out 2 more teaser songs before that even comes out. So the next couple weeks is going to be a lot of stuff. Just rehearsals and stuff coming out. And then the full record comes out. We do a record release show. And then we go on tour with Yob. So.
And like I said, we're mixing, a handful of new ones as well.
So how fast did this first album come together, actually?
I think it took a couple of years.
Yeah, it took a while, which is good. I think with any band, a lot of times their first record is their best record because they've had so much time to sort of cut the fat and really keep the good stuff. And like in our case, we had a full-length record. Like once we hit the spot where it was like, okay, we've got over 40 minutes of recorded good music, then I kind of just in a Hail Mary just kind of hit up Ipecac, like, hey guys, what do you think of this? You know, would you be into it? I didn't think they would really want to do it, but they did immediately. But they told us that they were going to need to have some time to put it out because they're pretty booked up. So we went back into the studio and recorded, I think, 3 or 4 more. And those came out really good because the band has sort of improved pretty much every time we've gotten together. So then those 4, we, again, cut the fat and took out some of the weaker ones and put in the new ones on the record because we had time to actually go back and work. So this record took a while to make. But again, you have the time to really edit. And you can make sure your first record is really up to snuff, you know?
It definitely is. I was really looking forward to it because I've been listening to Unsane for a long time. It immediately grabbed my attention, and obviously with a couple of guys in Swans and Jim from Cop Shoot Cop, it seemed to represent a certain period in time of New York, which maybe we can talk about a little bit later. But Ipecac is an interesting choice, and I think it's reflective of how you guys see your music. Why Ipecac? Why did you approach them?
I just sort of saw they had been super cool. They put out Visqueen on the Unsane record and had been fucking just amazingly cool about the whole thing. Distribution was great. Record sales were great. Everything was good. They paid us. Totally cool. Everybody's super nice. They'd done a great job. And my call really was, who do I hit up, Ipecac, or do I hit up Amphetamine Reptile? Which I actually did hit up AmRep, but I had Tom Hazelmeyer's old ancient email address, which he did not use anymore. So he didn't get my email. But Ipecac got right back to me. So it was kind of like, And then I know Tom does not really want to put out new stuff per se. He might do maybe some Melvin stuff or something like that. But he's not really into breaking a new band, and he's told me that before. And Ipecac maybe has more of a sort of strangely artistic sensibility. I totally love Amphetamine Reptile. And like I said, it was right up there with Ipecac. But I really both are good friends, and I think Ipecac just maybe has, for this band, I didn't really want to go with the metal labels. I just didn't, because I think while this music is very heavy, I don't consider it metal. So it would have been strange to go to try and hit up someone like Southern Lord, and. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it seemed just appropriate with what we were doing. It seemed like the best alternative for us.
Yeah, when I think of Ipecac, I really think of bands like Eponymous, Dalek. Like they don't choose genres. They take these bands that don't really fit in anywhere.
I feel exactly, which I like, which is cool.
And yet they've got like a pretty good fan base just as a label. So I mean, it's interesting that that they're definitely like curators in that way, but they're pretty far-reaching.
So let's talk a little bit about the recording of this album. You guys worked with Martin Bisi, who people know from his work with a lot of the old New York bands like Live Skull and probably Sonic Youth and bands like that. Why did you choose Martin?
So, I mean, we started with Martin. The first recording session we did was with Martin. And, I feel like he helped kind of give like gave birth to like what we were doing in that way. But the bulk of the recording ended up being out in Hoboken Recorders with this guy, Alan Camlett. Martin's important, but Alan's kind of this unsung hero in it because I guess Martin's a bit of a known entity and people kind of latch on to that. But Alan really did a lot of the recording and he did the mixing as well. Martin was easily approachable. Both of us have histories working in that studio. It felt like a very natural place to kind of start the project.
So I've seen it written about the album that it reflects a certain period in the New York music scene and maybe a certain period in New York itself. Do you guys feel that? Like, is it reflective of the city? Is it reflective of an era?
I feel it's it may be reflective of the city as it used to be. The city now is not that city. The city now is like a corporatized, sanitized, shopping mall, out of price for anybody, who's creatively minded and trying to like get by on that. So it's a very different city. There's also there's like that. There's a reminiscence of like maybe that energy of of what it used to be. Things falling apart, like dangerous and scuzzy around the edges. That's kind of where we come from in our maybe our heart is there. At the same time, I feel like the music is very current and future reaching in terms of social, political, psychological kind of groundings. The other thing I wanted to mention in that vein is like we see a lot of like bands from the 90s now kind of reuniting, and that's cool. A lot of bands that I really like and admire are kind of coming back, but I am really fucking glad that what we're doing is not like reuniting something we've done in the past, but like really creating something new from the ground up.
Completely agree.
So, Chris, you mentioned that you moved out to California after living in New York and I think associated musically with New York for a long time. How much of what Jim described about New York becoming this playground for the rich, this corporatized city, how much of that was part of your decision?
I mean, I guess on a just basic level was sort of priced out of where I used to live to a certain extent. The roof was falling in on our building and the guys were not going to fix it and there was no way to move. But besides that, really as a person, I just wanted to get away from the masses. I just was tired of the fucking bullshit, the grind of just fucking being part of the giant machine where, you just stand in line to do anything and it's just retarded. Like now I go back, I'm so glad. I mean, it's cool to visit, but at the same time, people just walk around staring at their phones all day. It's really, it's just kind of retarded. I like being out in the middle of nowhere. I'm way north of San Francisco, so I'm out in the middle of nowhere by myself. We got 4 dogs and my brother, but it's just I like the freedom of being on my own, So that had a lot to do with me getting out of there.
we've kind of circled the topic a little bit. I would like to talk to you guys about the New York scene in the 80s, because you guys all you came from a very specific, I don't even know if you describe it as a scene, but it was different from what Swans was doing, what Cop Shoot Cop was doing, what Unsane was doing is very different from what was happening in some of the other parts of the city, like the New York hardcore scene and thrash scene and stuff like that. And I've spoken to, for example, Mark from Live Skull and Andy from Blind Idiot God about that period. I'm curious what your take is. Jim, you talked about a little bit about the grime.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. New York, starting from the 70s, if not before, was like a destination for like all the outcasts, It was not like no one really, quote unquote, would want to live there, but it was affordable. There was a lot of stuff going on, underground creatively, not just in the music scene, but, in the, performance, visual arts, film, all kinds of stuff. So there was a really tight-knit community, and it was really supportive. A lot of people knew each other, and there was, like you mentioned, there's subgroups within that. We weren't a part of the hardcore scene or, all that. I think at the end of the day, creatively, Unsane and Cop, we were just basically doing what we heard in our heads and hearts, not trying to fit into any scene. And in a way, I guess we kind of created our own reality in that way. We grew up together as bands. We used to share a rehearsal space on Avenue B. It was Cop Shoot Cop, Unsane, and Pussy Galore. We played countless shows together. And it wasn't, we weren't trying to create a scene. I guess we were part of, in retrospect, yeah, we were part of a scene. And the city was like, in a way, it was this weird, screwed up playground. And it was dangerous. It was, a lot of people, like, drugs were a huge part of it. A lot of people didn't make it through. And there was a lot of desperation and destruction that kind of ensued along the way. There was a lot of different angles to it. But musically, creatively, it was totally like this fertile breeding ground.
So am I wrong in understanding that a lot of what you guys were doing and a lot of the bands that you played with, it was centered around the knitting factory?
I wouldn't say that.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say more like the Pyramid and CBGB's.
Yeah.
Really, maybe ABC No Rio a little bit. There was like stuff in our neighborhood that was, I mean, I could just walk to a show at CB's, and hang out with my friends. I mean, I used to go to CB's maybe 3 or 4 nights a week, knew everybody there, just check out some bands, even if they sucked, it was something to do. And just started, like, when I started out with Unsane, same with Cop Shoot Cop, I think we were really kind of embraced by everyone. Everybody kind of was like, oh yeah, hey, you want this show, you want that show. You want to play with Pussy Galore at the Pyramid, or, Mudhoney even. I remember that one was funny because we lent them a drum kit, and it was such a crappy drum kit that Mark Arm tried to stand on the kick drum and cracked it. But we were just really embraced by people. It was a real shit show of drugs and violent crime and car alarms constantly and noise and chaos. The city was it was in shambles. At one point, I think Dinkins was going to turn off every third street light just to save money. So the city was in really bad shape. But like Jim said, it creatively, just in the group of people who wanted to do shit, everybody embraced each other and fucking helped each other out. And it created its own scene just by being supportive of each other amidst the incredible chaos and lawlessness, which was actually kind of fun.
So a lot of bands from that period get kind of lumped in together. We mentioned a couple of them. A band like Swans and a band like Live Skull and, obviously Unsane and Cop Shoot Cop never really sounded alike, but, you guys were all kind of grouped together as various things like noise rock, no wave was another term. What did you think about that? What did you think of being categorized with these other bands like that?
I think all of us were just representative of our interpretation of our environment, to be honest with you. Just chaos, noise, drugs, craziness, a very lawless city. So I think that's basically like a bunch of different guys' interpretations of how they represent that musically. I really think the environment had a lot to do with what came out of New York at that time. Jim, you got anything to add to that?
I agree. It's weird because there's obviously like, sonic differences amongst the different bands you mentioned, but there's also kind of an intensity and maybe a ferocity, that's shared, and that was definitely kind of the city at that time. Though the city is different, I feel like that kind of sensibility is really valid today, almost on a front through like politics and social media and stuff. It's like it's there's this kind of similar desperation and like ruthlessness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, what is next for Human Impact? What do you guys have planned?
We touched on this before, but later this week we're mixing a handful of new tracks, so we're working on the next record. There's I think a single coming out this week, and then another highlighted song from the album coming out on the 13th, which is the date that the March 13th the full record comes out. March 14th in New York, we're playing, doing a record release show, and then soon after that going to West Coast shows with Yob. We'll be doing more touring in the U.S. in September, and then concentrating on Europe and UK in November, December. So we're looking forward to getting out on the road more.
Now, this next record you're working on, do you guys have a tentative release date, or is it just TBD whenever you guys are done?
Yeah.
TBD. Yeah, no, we're just writing shit. We just keep writing. I mean, me and Jim like working. We just keep going, and so we're just writing more stuff, see what happens, see how it comes out, and then when we need to put something out, we will. And I think the way things are now, Ipecac tends to release like 1 or 2 tracks at a time, which is good because we're doing like 3 or 4 at a time generally in the studio. So then we have, singles for the next few months, and then eventually the full length comes out. So we just kind of have our bases covered month by month.
Just saying that, I didn't really bring up the style of the album, but a lot of the songs are so different from each other. I think it's starting to make sense now. Like, you guys really write kind of in batches, and kind of, I don't know if this is right to say, but almost like on a whim. Like, you don't have an overarching plan for the album. It's just, whatever ideas you guys come up with, you work on them and you flesh them out.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally true, but then at the same time, when you get to, at the end of the day, when the record's got to come out, you want to make sure that it stands as a full album, as almost like one long song. So, I mean, on the record that's coming out in a couple of weeks, there were, I don't know, Jim, it was like 5 or 6 tracks that we had pulled off the record and put other ones in there to give it sort of continuity and not have it dip into like a super slow part, thing on the B-side, or, so you really have to take all the parts that you've done over the past year and put them together and edit again to give it the full record. You can't just blindly be like, oh, okay, here's 3 from that session, here's 4 from that session, and just kind of stick those together. You do need to really consider the entire record, obviously.
So for this first album, which song would you say changed the most from conception to the finished recorded song?
Cool. I don't know. Jim?
In a way, I'm thinking the first one that comes to mind is This Dead Sea. I don't know why. I have to do a little dive in there and see like why that came to mind. I know that there was some like real rearranging once we got into like heavier rehearsals, and it kind of like has a depth to the sound that just kind of develops.
So,
yeah, I could agree with that, because it did, the original demo of that did sound a lot different.
Yeah. Consequences is another one, partly because that was one from the first session, and we didn't really know what we were doing, so it was really like, it took a lot of kind of, work to get that.
Is Consequences the third song?
No.
Yeah. Oh, you mean on the album? No,
yeah,
Consequences, I think, is song 6, I believe.
I see. Okay.
I think it's the third song on the B-side.
Yeah, third one is Protester.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
third song on the B side, on the second side of the record. It's third from the end.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just thinking if that was one of the first songs you wrote, because there's a song. I think I'm thinking of the right song. I'm sorry. I think Protester. Yeah, Protester is, if you don't mind me saying, is very Unsane sounding, and so I figured like that was probably.
Oh. Oh, wow.
Am I thinking of the right song? Protester is the one that's a little bit more upbeat, right? A little bit faster.
Yeah. And it does kind of have that Unsane Telecaster guitar thing going on at the beginning,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I could see where that's going on. When we play it live, I could definitely see that a little more, So
Am I wrong, or is the guitar more restrained on Human Impact than it was on any Unsane album? It feels like the keys are much more prominent.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to work more with sort of no effects, just like an old classic Twin and a Tele. And so some of it's really super clean with just like, amp reverb. So I became more of a Puritan is kind of what's going on. But then also using other weird shit, this old PCM 41. So there was just shit I wanted to do that I hadn't done with Unsane. Unsane is just so full blast that I wanted to try some other shit,
Yeah.
And also, I think like I'm covering also a lot of that kind of some of the stuff I'm doing covers some of that like more high end distorted, which is kind of something like Chris and I like playing with, is like that interplay between guitar and electronics.
Yeah. So the electronics kind of takes the same sonic space that the old distorted guitars would have taken.
It can at times.
It can. It can be rough if you don't work together. It'll just be a shit show, because you'll have two totally different phrases going on in that higher end, and it's been really fun working with Jim on that stuff actually. And a lot of times you may not notice it, but they're actually playing similar, very similar, almost the same parts, just working together with this sort of microtonal dissonance. So
you guys mentioned the album launch at Vitus in a couple of weeks. Have you guys had a chance to play live?
We've just done one show.
Yeah, we've only played once.
Wow, cool. And so you're kind of jumping right into a tour right after that release show.
Yeah. Looking forward.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Human Impact's self-titled debut will be out March 13th by Ipecac Recordings. What is the best way for people to order this album or to hear it?
Oh.
The best way to hear it is to go to Ipecac. They've got everything. They're putting it out. So yeah, you can do digital download. That's probably the easiest for a lot. If you like vinyl, grab the vinyl. Their CDs. They got everything. It's all Ipecac Recordings.
Ipecac has a Bandcamp page. The preview tracks are up now, and it'll be out through all the usual streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff.
Yep.
Cool. Jim and Chris, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
sure, man. Thank you.